Hello, thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Thursday, March 11th edition of our video devotionals, and we appreciate you joining us today. We have a beautiful day here, and I know in a lot of parts of the country, the weather is definitely starting to turn into that spring mode, and that's a good thing. And some people had a really hard winter this year, and I think a lot of people had a below average winter conditions. So otherwise, I know we're all looking forward to spring. Well, our theme this week has been about water, just the basic water. And we're going to talk about that today. Today's going to be a little bit more sobering and yet at the same time encouraging, but we're going to look at a story that's probably the most sobering story of all the Bible. We're going to be in Luke chapter 16, and we're going to talk about the rich man that died and he went to hell. And we're also going to talk about Jesus who spoke with the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, and we're going to talk about the two stories there involving water. So again, we appreciate you watching our videos, and again, we're approaching almost the 1 year mark. We're getting close to it, and thank you for all who have been there from day one all the way till now. And we're just going to try to continue these, Lord willing, and we'll just try to help each other along the way, okay? All right, so Luke chapter 16. We're going to begin in verse number 20. We're going to read basically the first half of this story and down to the part where it speaks of water. It says, "And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom." Now notice this in verse 24. "And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame." Very, very sobering story, and yet it's not a parable. It's a story about a rich man and a man by the name of Lazarus who was a beggar. The beggar Lazarus did not have much in life, very, very, very poor, and the rich man, of course, had all that he wanted. Both died, and of course, one was comforted there, being in that state of paradise, and then the other, of course, being the rich man, he died, and the Bible says, "And in hell he lift up his eyes." Now notice his desire for water here. He asked, and he said, "Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue." And isn't that sad? Here's a man who died without the Lord, and all he's asking for is basically a drop of water from the tip of the finger of Lazarus. Now think and hold that thought right there. And then we're going to look at John chapter 4. And again, this is kind of a lengthy story, but we're going to begin at verse number 13. Of course, Jesus is speaking with the Samaritan woman at the well. And he says, "Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again," talking about the water down in the well where she was at. "But whoso drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water, springing up in everlasting life." Now here's a story about a woman. She begins to speak with Jesus, and the conversation has a lot of elements to it. But here's Jesus telling this lady that I have water that I can give you that's everlasting water. It'll be like a well springing up into everlasting life. There's that spiritual water, Jesus himself. And then as we go back to the story about the rich man who simply wants water that he had known all his life, perhaps the rich man may have had a beautiful well on his own property, may have had springing fountains. A rich man may have had, like the aqueducts, canals, so to speak, that brought water into his residence. Whatever the case is, he's in hell, and all he's asking for is a drop of water for his tongue. Now, here's the sad part of the story. The lady at the well, she eventually, of course, she believes on Jesus, and she gets that everlasting water. She's so excited, and she goes into town, starts telling everybody, and then, of course, Jesus himself is able to speak to other people, and many people get saved there, all because of Jesus uses an illustration about a well where there's water that everybody drinks and everybody needed, and of course, using that as an application, as an illustration, he says, "But I've got water that you don't know anything about. And if you'll drink of that, you'll never thirst again." He's speaking of himself, who's the water of life. So how sad there's one man that in his life he never partook of the water that Jesus would provide himself, the everlasting water. and he dies and goes to hell, and he's still asking for water that he had. He probably had water all that he ever needed and wanted in his own life in water, and yet he failed to get the water of life, which was Jesus. And how sad he's just asking for one drop of that water. You know, how sad he did not ask for the water of life, and now he's asking for water that he cannot get and he never will get, and that same rich man is in hell. So obviously the story is, in this life, you need to partake of the water of life, which is Jesus. If you're out there, there is a thirst in your soul for Jesus if you don't have Jesus, and only He can satisfy that need. And all you need is just one partaking of it, so to speak, and then all of a sudden you'll have everlasting life forever. It'll be a well of life springing up in everlasting life, and you'll have that for good. The rich man did not partake of that, and Lazarus had done that in his own life, and he's been comforted, and from all the sorrows and troubles that he had in the life that he lived. And the rich man, we're guessing, just lived a life of ease and all that he ever wanted. But he did not have the water of life like the lady at the well did, and like Lazarus did, obviously. So the illustration, of course, today is how simple it is, that how plentiful water is in our life, and you can get water almost anywhere. And many houses, of course, has it where you can drink it, and you can purchase it almost anywhere. And yet so many people will partake of that water and won't partake of the water that also is freely available, and that's Jesus. And of course, what a difference. If a person dies without Christ, then they die without the water of life, the everlasting, and they too will go to hell. It's very sobering. So we need to, it's very basic. People are without the water, and that's Jesus. And we need to present people with Jesus and say, you need to partake of this water. And if you ever do, you'll never thirst again, and you'll live for eternity. And you'll have it in this life, the satisfactions that Jesus brings in this life, and the life that we can live for Him, and the will that He has for our life. Just partaking one time of that water, and it'll be a permanent solution, certainly to a permanent problem. And yet the rich man never did that. He just wanted a drop of water to cool that tongue of his in hell. And how interesting that he didn't even ask mercy of God. Maybe it's kind of indicative of his life. He never did it in that life, and he certainly wasn't doing it there. He's saying, have mercy on me, Abraham, not God. And he says, I want water like I'm used to having, just to cool my tongue. So it is a sad story. It's a true story, and yet we need to realize by faith there's people out there, every time you see somebody, they either have the water or they don't. And one day they're going to spend eternity in heaven, or they're going to spend eternity in hell, all because of partaking of water. Either just living their life drinking natural water, which is certainly just a temporary fix to a physical condition called thirst, and just living, or they can partake of Jesus and to live for eternity with everlasting water. So that's the choice, and we need to help people with that choice. So we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow as we close out this final of our series about water. Hope you have a great day.